Now, I'm in a 72-year-old body today. I remember being in a 20-year-old body, and in a 30-year-old body, and a 40-year-old body. And you can't find one cell of the body that I was in when I was 20 years old, 50 years ago. There's not one cell left. You go out there and I can't find it. It had all kinds of flowing stuff coming out of my head, and you know, it's like, it's gone. You're not doing anything. You're just being done. That's one of the things that the Tao says, that the Tao is just another term for God. The Tao does nothing. It leaves nothing undone. It leaves nothing undone. Makes the planets stay in alignment, the sun comes out, the oceans are filled, life goes on, fish reproduce themselves, roses show up, and there's nobody out there doing anything. It does nothing. So the question of who we are is can't be answered in physical terms, and it can't be answered with the senses. Your senses will lie to you. They will tell you something, and it's just not true, you know. I mean, our senses even tell us right now that we're sitting still when we're hurling through this ocean, right, at 20 knots. But we're also, so is the whole ocean hurling through space at something like 11 or 12,000 miles an hour. And it's also orbiting around the sun and turning on its axis. So it's turning, orbiting, and hurling all at the same moment. And your senses are saying, I'm just sitting here. You don't see with your eyes. You have to see through your eyes. The part of you that is processing what I'm saying here right now has no form to it, has no beginning, it has no end. There's an infinite part of you. There's an invisible part of you. And until you're comfortable with it and know it and understand that it is the creator, the creation takes place through this creative process within you, called your mind, called your thoughts, called your spirit, called your soul. And one of the things that I have learned is that it's necessary to understand what your soul is to follow your excitement. Now hear this. Your excitement is who you are. Just let that in. We're getting very philosophical. I love it when we get like this, especially when I know we have lots of time, so we can just take it, you know, just... Your excitement is who you are. You're not this body. It's the soul. It's this invisibleness. It's what causes you to feel passion. It's following your excitement. And it's something you can do at any time. And when you do, I guarantee you these two things. It will be effortless, and you will always be supported. It's always an effort when you are not following your excitement. What is it in here? What is that creative spark that just makes you want to do something, or you just feel drawn to do it? And the more you pay attention to this spark, this inner excitement, the more it will support you, and you'll find yourself doing amazing things, like really amazing things. Here's what Patanjali, the great 3rd century BC Indian scholar, great beautiful soul, who was the father of meditation, one who taught me the japa meditation and the I am meditation. He said, when you are inspired, inspired means in spirit. When you are inspired, that means when you are following your excitement. When you are inspired, by some great project, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. And then he said, and this is what I mean by being effortless, he said, dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. Or I say, were ever taught that you could become. Because you were not raised to believe in your divinity. You were raised, as Rumi said in that thing I read between the Chinese and the Byzantines, you were raised to believe in your limitations. And you don't know that within you, you have God. You are God. God is not an external concept. It's what the ego has taught us that it is. So that if you can answer the question, who am I? Who am I? And understand that who you are is a divine speck, if you will, a divine fragment of the universal consciousness. God's one and only voice's silence means that God is that which is indivisible. There is no place that God is not. And you can't divide God up and say that God is on this side or God is on that side. I've often said that God isn't doing anything different now than God was doing an hour ago or 100 years ago. And God isn't doing anything different now than he will be doing 1,000 years from now. God is exclusively here and now, not elsewhere, not in heaven someplace apart from us, but here, now, and indivisible. And the word indivisible is very important, because that which is everywhere and cannot be separated or carved up is something that we have a great deal of difficulty in the world of the physical form experiencing and understanding. Because our world, the world of you listening here, is a world of dichotomies. It's a world of paradoxes. We divide everything up. And dichotomies are just our way of being. We divide everything in the world up. The only reason we know that something called darkness exists is because of light. If there was nothing called light, we wouldn't know anything called darkness. The only reason we have a concept called up is because we have something of its reverse called down. You've never seen a person with a front who doesn't have a back. You've never seen a person with an outside who doesn't have an inside. We divide everything. Everything is in the world of the divisible. In the Bhagavad Gita, it speaks about transcending the dichotomies, figuring out a way to get past the up-down, the male-female, the good-bad, the right-wrong, the old, the new, the alive and the dead. Everything has its dichotomy. You can always find its opposites. In fact, that's how the symbolism of language is created, through having opposites. We don't know about oneness in the physical world. Everything has its counterpart, its dichotomy, except for silence. Silence is the only experience that is the same as God. It is indivisible. You take silence, and we'll have some right now, and now let's just cut that in half. And what do we have? More silence. Let's take what we've cut in half and cut it in half again and again. And endlessly you attempt to divide into a dichotomy, silence, but you can never do it, because silence is indivisible. And silence is God's one and only voice. When you go into silence, you go into the place where you make conscious contact with God, whatever it is that God means to you. You make conscious contact with that omnipotent, omniscient force in the world, that omnipresence of God. And the reason I say that it's not crowded along the extra mile is because the mile that most people are on is a very, very noisy mile. And I encourage young people to become more comfortable with silence. We live in a world of bulldozers and leaf blowers and trucks that make endless amounts of noise and chatter. And constantly, I have a home, a place a retreat that I go to frequently on Maui. And oftentimes I will walk in the morning and they're in a big building project in Maui. And I'll go past one building after another and start to count the noisemakers as all of these machines and all of these people who are trying to make the place look so pristine and so beautiful and so landscaped, instead of just letting it grow, just letting it be. Silence and God are one because you can't divide either one of them, okay? So that going to silence as frequently as you can and understanding that out of silence, everything is created. The words that you are listening to right now as I speak emerge from silence. That silence is the source. And it's the source that is what we want to make conscious contact with. Like the source of all light is the sun. And the only reason we know about light is because of something called darkness. But when you go to the source can't be divided.
Two quotes. The first from the Upanishads, quote, "Life in the world and life in the spirit are not incompatible," unquote. And from Søren Kierkegaard, the great Danish theologian, quote, "The majority of men live without being thoroughly conscious that they are spiritual beings," unquote. Heaven should not be thought of as a place you'll ultimately arrive at once you leave this earthly existence. Rather, it seems to me that you'd want to experience heaven right here on earth. As the title of this chapter suggests from a poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, earth itself is crammed with heaven. But do you see heaven in your daily life? Do you feel as if you're in a heavenly world? If the answer is no, then you're out of balance. You've probably made your physical world the primary focus of your life, with little or no attention given to the heavenly part of your earthly existence. What this imbalance looks like. When you place the larger part of your life energy on the material world, you're generally in a continual state of worry about your stuff, and you feel like you'll never get ahead in this game of life. Virtually all of your mental energy is focused on what you have or don't have. You assess your worth based on such material issues as what kind of automobile you drive or how fashionably you're dressed. You may even feel inferior because other people have more stuff. This imbalance between the spiritual and material world usually means that indebtedness is a way of life. You place a heavy emphasis on winning, becoming number one, and comparing yourself to others. A preoccupation with the material aspects of life leads to looking at life in a superficial way, where appearance is viewed as more important than substance. What others think is the most important measuring device, and how you stack up to externally imposed standards becomes all important. All of this anxiety that leads to stress is avoidable if you opt to balance the material-spiritual scale. Just a balance, an even split between these two aspects of yourself, is all you need to achieve. The title of this chapter, Earth's Crammed with Heaven, is meant to signify that it's all right here, right now, not in some other place in a distant future years from now or after the death of your physical self. Heaven is right here, now, at this time, when you find your balance point. Equalizing the balance scale. Heaven is a state of mind, not a location. Since spirit is everywhere and in everything, you can begin equalizing your material and spiritual life by making a conscious decision to look for the unfolding of spirit in everything and everyone that you encounter. I personally do this by making an effort to look upon my world as if I were observing it through lenses that filter out the form and all of the material aspects of what I'm seeing, and I can only view the spiritual energy that allows what I'm noticing to exist. Try putting on these imaginary magical lenses and see how different everything appears. The natural world is a pleasant place to begin this experiment. Nature. When you look at a tree without these imaginary form-fitting lenses, you may see branches, blossoms, leaves, and perhaps mangoes or plums. With your enchanting new lenses, the lines that form tree boundaries dissolve, and there's an energy vibrating so fast that it gives a whole new perspective of the tree. You see the spaces between the leaves, and notice the silence of the now defunct acorn or mango pit out of which the first sprout of creation emerged, jump-starting the whole process that eventually became the tree you're looking at. You see the continuation of this life-giving process residing deep within the tree that lets it sleep in the winter and blossom in the spring, or into infinity, or at least for the duration of its life. You realize that new mangoes are producing not only new fruit, but an infinity of mango trees as well. You see this life force in just one tree extending backward and forward in a never-ending stream of creation. Begin looking at all of nature with this new vision. Birds, ants, lakes, mountains, clouds, stars, all of it. Deepen your vision so that you no longer see only form and boundaries. Appreciate the miracle that is your environment. As you do so, you're getting into balance. People. These new lenses allow you to see everyone in a fresh perspective. You're no longer seeing tall and short, dark and light, male and female, old and young, beautiful and homely. Your lenses blur the lines that categorize people by cultural or religious differences, and you don't see others as only their attire or physical appearances or the language they speak. All appearances dissolve through filters in your lenses and your thoughts, so you now see the unfolding of the spiritual energy in every person you encounter. What you notice is pure love vibrating right before your eyes. You see kindness personified. You see and feel the same vulnerabilities in all others that you feel within yourself. You see enormous strands of peaceful, glimmering energy connecting each of us. Your new outlook invites you to playfully imagine that 2 people created you, and 4 people created the 2 people who created you, and 8 people created the 4 people who created the 2 people who created you. As we go back a few more generations to the time of Abraham Lincoln, there are 16,000 people you're related to who had to come together to create you. We can imagine going back to the time of Socrates and puzzle over the apparent math we come up with. Trillions of people were needed to create one of us, but trillions of people haven't even existed, so somehow, in some mathematically puzzling way, we're all related to each other. These are the kinds of fascinating connections that you can begin to observe with your imaginary lenses, transforming your thoughts. You discover that there's no one to judge, no one to hate, and no one to harm, because you see clearly that we're related. In fact, we're all one. From here, you can extend your perspective to include all of life. Events. Where you once viewed the comings and goings of people as pure happenstance in current time, shaping the events of your life and the lives of everyone else, your new filtering lenses allow you to see how all of these things are connected energetically. Now you see an infinite network of laser-like energies emanating from the thoughts of everyone, blending the events in everyone's life in energetic perfection. You see people with very fast vibrations of energy matching up perfectly with the energy of the source of creation. You see how they attune with the all-creating, all-knowing source of life, and how events are perfectly attracted in a vibrational match. You also see what appears to be accidents, tragedies, and horrors, and how they, too, are vibrational matches that collide in what you've called mistakes, but are really the result of 2 or more energies meeting in a larger picture that you couldn't previously see. You witness the connection between the expectations of individuals and what they attract into their lives. With these amazing lenses, you note that all events and all accidental encounters are really incredibly compatible vibrational matches rather than randomly occurring situations. With this awareness, you're attaining a level of balance between spirit and form.